Hey, welcome to Nomads End 101. This is the show where we break down everything in the Nomads End universe. The characters, the lore, the power system, the organizations, all of it. One topic at a time, properly. Now, if you're new to Nomads End, here's the short version. It's an original, fictional universe built around a class of people called Nomads, operators who can channel an energy called Sakti to fight threats that regular people simply cannot handle. Think professional crisis response, except the crises involve things that would make most people retire on the spot. The world is deep. The power system is genuinely interesting. The characters have actual construction to them, and there is a lot to cover. So that's what we're doing here. No fluff, no padding, just clean breakdowns with enough personality to keep it from feeling like homework. If that sounds like your kind of thing, stick around. Episode 1 is Pradaken Kaioshi, the chosen one. Right, so, Nomads End has a protagonist, and if you went in completely blind, no context, no lore, no idea what you were looking at, your first impression of this guy would probably be, okay, goofy kid, makes bad jokes, seems friendly enough. Your second impression, roughly 30 seconds later, would be, wait, why is everyone in this room treating him like he matters? Your third impression, once you actually sit down and look at what this character is doing, is the one that sticks. Because Pradaken Kaioshi is 14 years old, he is operating at capability levels that most nomads don't reach until they're well into adulthood. He has been flagged by the people who monitor these things as one of the most significant emerging figures in the modern nomad community, and somehow he still finds time to make puns that nobody laughs at. Genuinely impressive multitasking. Welcome to Nomads End 101. Today we're breaking down everything you need to know about the series' main character, his origins, his power set, his personality, and the central mystery that drives his entire arc. Let's get into it. Segment 01, where he comes from. Here's the thing about Pradaken's backstory. There isn't one. Not really. Not in the way most protagonists have one. He was found during an event called The Darkest Hour. And before you ask, yes, that name is doing exactly the work it sounds like it's doing. The Darkest Hour is described in the world of Nomads End as one of the worst catastrophic crises in human history. Not a bad week, not a rough patch. One of the worst things that has ever happened. And in the middle of all that, someone found an infant. That someone was Justice Clearstorm, the headmaster of Paladin Reality Group, one of the major nomad organizations. Justice took the infant home, adopted him, gave him a name, gave him a family, and spent the next 14 years training him under direct personal mentorship. The circumstances of how that infant ended up in the middle of a catastrophic crisis, sealed in Justice's personal records. What's in those records? Justice has never said. Pradaken has learned over the years to accept that without demanding answers. He's not suppressing the curiosity. He's just decided the information will come when it comes, and in the meantime he has work to do. What he does have is a family. Marina Clearstorm, Justice's biological daughter, born 2 years after the adoption, grew up alongside him, trained with him. The kind of closeness that only comes from being raised in the same house from infancy. She's his sister, full stop, and he treats her accordingly. What he also has, and this is the part worth paying close attention to, is a purpose, or at least the shape of one. Segment 02, The Chosen One Problem. Justice Clearstorm has told Pradaken one thing that shapes everything about his character arc, and I want to be precise here because the specifics matter. Justice told him, "You are the chosen one. You carry particular significance to humanity's future. That's it. That's the information. No further detail. No explanation of what chosen actually means in practice, what the significance looks like, or what Pradaken is supposed to do when the moment finally comes. Just, you matter in a specific way, for a reason I'm not going to explain right now. And here's what makes Pradaken interesting. He accepts it, not passively, not because he's checked out or incurious. He accepts it because justice has never been wrong about him. Every prediction justice has made about his development has landed. Every time justice has said he could do something, he could do it. The track record is perfect. So when justice says you are the chosen one and then declines to elaborate, Pradaken files it under things justice is right about and moves forward. The question the story is actually asking, the thing that makes this compelling rather than just a standard chosen one setup, is whether that trust will eventually be justified. Justice believes in Pradaken completely. Pradaken believes in justice completely. At some point, one of those beliefs is going to be tested in a way that actually costs something. We don't know yet what that looks like, but the fact that we're waiting for it is what keeps you reading. What he's actually like. Okay, let's talk about Pradaken as a person, because this is where he stops being a concept and starts being a character. On the surface, he's a lot. Loud laugh, makes puns at deeply inappropriate moments, gets distracted mid-tactical analysis by something tangential, takes up space in a room in a way that makes people notice him before he's done anything worth noticing. First impression is almost always goofy kid, underestimated by most people who haven't seen him actually operate, and then he operates. Because underneath the goofiness is something that genuinely doesn't fit with being 14. Pradaken runs on principles, and I don't mean that in a vague inspirational sense. His entire decision-making framework runs on two foundational convictions. Protecting people is right, and harming innocents is wrong. No grey zone, no negotiation, no acceptable losses. These aren't ideas he debates with himself. They're structural facts about how he moves through the world. When someone violates those principles, his first response is genuine confusion, not anger, confusion. How could someone not understand that protecting people matters? The confusion is sincere. He extends trust automatically, without calculation, and when the evidence doesn't support it, he feels genuinely sad about it. When the confusion can't be resolved, when someone has crossed a line that can't be walked back, he responds without hesitation, and he is fully capable of being ruthless about it. The loyalty works the same way. Once someone is in his circle, they're in. Marina. He would do genuinely dark things to keep her safe, and he is not subtle about communicating that. Nyx, a teammate Pradaken decided was going to be great, and then proceeded to push toward that greatness regardless of whether Nyx agreed. Reed, someone he quietly identified as underestimating themselves, and then began including in conversations in ways that mattered, listening to their analysis like it was the most important thing in the room. He tells people what he believes about them, out loud, with complete conviction. Most people would feel ridiculous saying things like, "I'm going to protect everyone," or "We're going to be amazing." Pradaken says them because he means them. And his certainty has this effect on people. They start believing him too. The contradiction at the center of him, goofy but serious, trusting but precise, optimistic but ruthless, 14 years old but carrying weight most adults never encounter, is not something he thinks about. Justice didn't raise him to think about it. Justice raised him to be it. The result is someone who is easy to underestimate and impossible to ignore once you're paying attention. The Power System Foundation. Alright, let's get into the mechanics, because Pradaken's ability set is genuinely well constructed and it deserves a proper breakdown. Quick primer first. The foundational energy system in Nomads End is called Sakti. It's what Nomads channel, develop and weaponize. Every Nomad has a gift, a unique Sakti expression that defines their combat identity. Gifts vary enormously in type, application and raw output. The variety is part of what makes the Nomad world interesting to dig into. Pradaken's gift is called Deathbringer, Death Origin Sakti. The name is not being subtle about what it does. It's force-tied conceptually and functionally to death, dissolution, and ending. In practice, it manifests as violet-white energy with explosive and severing properties. It cuts through the defensive Sakti structures nomads use, called coats, and at peak output produces detonations capable of physically reshaping the terrain of an engagement. His martial arts system is called Undead style, and here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Undead style wasn't an existing discipline Pradaken trained in. Justice Clearstorm designed it specifically for him. It is a bespoke synthesis of 5 distinct combat methodologies built around one guiding philosophy. Don't be a specialist, be a generalist at the highest possible level. The style is designed to engage any opponent, adapt to any fighting approach, and respond with precision regardless of what the engagement demands. It never commits to a fixed technique set or tactical philosophy. It shifts, responds, adapts, like the undead entities it's named for. Always moving, never static. Which, when you combine it with what Deathbringer can actually do, produces someone who is both extremely hard to pin down and extremely dangerous to stand in front of. The skeleton aura. We have to talk about the aura, because visually, this might be the defining image of Pradaken as a fighter, and it's worth understanding what it actually is, rather than just what it looks like. When Pradaken hits peak emotional or Sakti intensity, when something he cares about is genuinely threatened, when an opponent presents a real challenge, when his Deathbringer gift is channeling at levels that exceed his body's capacity to contain, his Sakti expresses outward, and what it builds is a massive skeletal structure wreathed in violet white lightning. We're talking a colossal skull, architectural in its complexity, dozens of meters across, geometric lines across the surface, structural ribbing, curved horns extending upward, the interior glowing with pale violet-white death origin Sakti, continuous electrical arcing cascading across the bone-like framework. It dwarfs the engagement area completely. And here's the important part, it's not decoration. The aura extends Pradaken's Sakti field to a massive geographic scale. The lightning creates electromagnetic disturbance, reduced visibility, interference with Sakti perception, constant psychological pressure from the electrical discharge. The overflow of his Sakti output doesn't dissipate into nothing. It builds the structure and puts it to work. The other important part, he doesn't turn this on. It emerges when the conditions are met. When his emotional intensity crosses a threshold he doesn't consciously control. When his Sakti output hits its ceiling. It's not a decision, it's a consequence. There's a reason people stop and reassess when they see it. A 14-year-old who reflexively manifests something that scale is operating at a level that does not match the context of his age. Everyone in that engagement knows it. And whatever they were thinking about their chances before the aura appeared, they're thinking something different now. Core abilities. Before we get to the named techniques, Pradaken has 3 foundational combat abilities that underpin everything else. These are what make his fights look the way they look. Mugen Tekken, Infinite Iron Fist Combat Adaptation. The moment an opponent begins an attack, Pradaken reads it. Trajectory, weight distribution, balance, follow-up options, defensive gaps. He generates a counter before his conscious mind has fully caught up with the information. And here's the key part. This adaptation accelerates as the fight continues. Each exchange teaches him more. Each counter reveals more. By the midpoint of an extended engagement, he's predicting movements the opponent hasn't consciously decided to make yet. This is why he consistently performs above his experience level. He doesn't need years of accumulated pattern recognition against different fighting styles. He builds it in real time during the fight. It's genuinely a bit unfair. Shinkai Kaiwai, Abyss Evasion Aim Dodging, built on a deceptively simple principle. The most efficient dodge requires the least movement. Rather than dramatic repositioning, Pradaken makes micro-adjustments, weight shifts measured in inches, that move him precisely out of an attack's path without wasting energy or giving up his offensive position. From the opponent's perspective, he seems to phase through incoming strikes. In reality, he's just never quite in the right place for them to land. Combined with Mugen Tekken, which is telling him where the strike is going before it gets there, landing a clean hit on Pradaken is a lot harder than his raw stats would suggest. Kyoi Kakugo, Anomaly Awareness. This one is harder to quantify, which is probably why it's the most interesting of the three. It's a fighting instinct ability, the capacity to recognize critical moments in an engagement as they're happening. The instant where one specific action will produce disproportionate effect. The split second where the tactical balance tips. Pradaken feels it before he consciously processes it. His body responds first. Observers watching him fight sometimes describe decisions that appear perfectly calibrated to situations that seemed too complex to read in the available time. That's Kyoi Kakugo. The combat intuition that usually takes decades to develop, present at 14 because justice prioritized it above almost everything else in his training, which again raises questions about what exactly justice is preparing him for. But we'll get back to that. Named techniques. On top of the foundational abilities and the 3 weapons, Pradaken has 5 named hand-to-hand techniques. Each one represents a different facet of what Deathbringer Sakti does when applied with precision and intent. Shido chopping, death path cleaving. The most technically refined thing he does. A hand-striking method derived from Chinese Kenpo pressure point theory, targeting specific anatomical structures, the carotid artery, the brachial plexus, the lateral knee ligaments, enhanced through Deathbringer Sakti to produce cutting force from unarmed hands. Not impact force, cutting force, blade equivalent delivered with fingers. The Sakti doesn't just hit, it severs. A defensive coat can absorb the physical impact. It cannot fully stop the cutting effect on the tissue underneath. The weakness is precision. A slightly off angle drops effectiveness significantly. Pradaken has trained his anatomical accuracy to exceptional levels, specifically because of that margin of error. If you're going to build a technique around hitting exact points on a moving target, you'd better not miss. Rengoku Raijin, Chained Hell Thunder God Volume Striking. Punches delivered fast enough to produce after-image effects. Opponents see multiple simultaneous strikes where there's actually one, just thrown faster than the eye can cleanly separate them. The Sakti cost is substantial across dozens of strikes in rapid succession, so this appears in the middle and later phases of engagements when he can afford it. Most defensive structures degrade under sustained pressure. That's the point. Shihai Shoken, Death Defeat. Palm Strike, a conversion technique. When Pradaken has taken significant damage and needs to reset momentum, Shihai Shoken lets him absorb incoming force through his palms and redirect it, combined with additional Deathbringer Sakti, as shockwave energy into the opponent's body. The damage propagates internally. Standard defensive surfaces aren't built to stop force that enters at the contact point and travels inward. He's using the opponent's aggression as the delivery mechanism for their own damage. Jigoku Mugenzuki, Hell Infinite Thrust, an evolution of Rengoku Raijin that adds directional coverage. Through precise footwork and stance management, Pradaken throws punches projecting from multiple angles, left, right, overhead, low, in rapid succession from a central position. An opponent defending against one direction is still receiving damage from another. The coverage is the technique. Less about power, more about making defense geometrically complicated. Coup de grace, Death's Judgment. This is the one. This is why his fights are shorter than his capability tier would suggest. Coup de grace is not a fixed technique, it's a conversion principle. Any strike Pradaken throws can become a coup de grace. At the moment of contact, he channels his Deathbringer gift's full Sakti output into that strike. The physical impact detonates, an explosion centered on the contact point. Conservative application is grenade equivalent force. Maximum output physically reshapes the engagement area. It can be applied to a pressure point strike, to individual punches within a barrage, to a palm strike during defensive positioning, to anything. Any attack, any moment can be the last one. And combined with the Reaper's Gauntlet, that single enhanced strike becomes something else entirely. Now, the weapons. Pradaken manifests 3 distinct Sakti weapons through his Deathbringer gift, and each one fills a different tactical role. They are not interchangeable. Each one changes the shape of an engagement the moment it appears. The Death Mask, Shyman. The first weapon is the Death Mask, a full-face covering that manifests as a stylized skull structure wreathed in violet-white Sakti. Smooth curved bone surfaces, architectural rather than organic. Eye sockets glowing with pale violet-white light. Energy ribbons trailing constantly around it. It phases into place when summoned and phases away when dismissed. No physical attachment, pure Sakti bonding. The mask does 2 things. The first is passive, Undead durability. While the mask is active, incoming damage isn't applied directly to Pradaken. It's absorbed by the mask's Sakti structure. The mask acts as a damage buffer, taking hits that would otherwise land on his body. You can see the mask accumulating damage in real time, visible cracks spread across the surface with each absorbed strike, which is equal parts useful information and deeply unsettling to watch. When the cracks reach breaking point, the mask shatters and dissipates back into raw Sakti. What this means tactically is that Pradaken can tank damage he'd normally have to evade. He can hold offensive positioning while absorbing hits. He can extend engagements, giving Mugen Tekken more time to map the opponent's patterns. The trade-off is that when the mask breaks, the buffer is gone, and so is the second ability, because the second thing the mask does is considerably louder. Death Scream. When Pradaken channels Sakti through the mask and screams, the mask amplifies and transforms the sound into a weaponized shockwave. Cone formation. Everything in the propagation zone receives both the kinetic force of a substantial physical impact and a dose of Death Origin Sakti on top of that. The frequency operates above normal human hearing range. Opponents often don't register the threat until the damage is already happening. It clears rooms, it disrupts structures, it forces every combatant in range to reposition simultaneously. If Pradaken is surrounded and needs to reset the engagement, Death Scream is how he creates distance across all directions at once. The obvious limitation is that it doesn't pick sides. Death Scream doesn't distinguish between hostile and friendly targets. In team engagements, deploying it requires either a lot of trust in your teammates or a lot of space between them and the opponent. And when the mask breaks, which a smart opponent will actively work toward, both Undead durability and Death Scream go with it. Breaking the mask is a real tactical objective for anyone fighting Pradaken, because that moment creates a vulnerability window with nothing to fill it. The Reaper's Gauntlet, Shinigami no Kote. The second weapon is the Reaper's Gauntlet, a forearm-length armored gauntlet manifested on Pradaken's hand. Layered Sakti-formed plating, golden spikes on the knuckles, the back of the hand, along the forearm, clawed fingers, and extending from the wrist, a heavy chain, wreathed in violet-white Sakti, capable of independent movement. The chain does 2 things depending on how Pradaken deploys it. As a binding weapon, it extends up to 15 or 20 meters, wraps automatically around whatever it contacts, and holds with Sakti-reinforced strength, equivalent to heavy physical restraints. Wrapped opponents can break free, but it takes several seconds of concentrated effort, and several seconds in an engagement is a long time. As a whip weapon, it's faster, striking at range, hitting from unexpected angles, wrapping around structures to redirect momentum, targeting multiple opponents in sequence. The chain is the control element of Pradaken's kit. It manages distance, restricts movement, and creates geometry that pure hand-to-hand combat can't. An opponent who's been wrapped once tends to think very differently about how close they want to get to that chain again. But the gauntlet itself, the armored hand, not the chain, is the part with real consequences. When Pradaken strikes with the gauntlet, the strike is automatically amplified into an enhanced coup de grace. The physical impact of the punch combined with focused Death Origin Sakti detonating at the contact point. One gauntlet strike can smash through reinforced barriers, break through heavily defended targets, reduce substantial structures to rubble. It is not a sustained combat tool. It is the one punch that ends the conversation about whether that barrier was actually going to hold. The critical weakness, he gets one. One enhanced gauntlet strike per deployment. After that, the gauntlet's Sakti charge is completely exhausted. The weapon stays manifested but goes inert, unusable for 5 to 10 minutes while it recovers. That single strike has to count. Use it too early, and you've spent your most explosive offensive tool before the engagement has found its critical moment. Hold it too long, and the moment passes without it. The decision of when to throw that punch is genuinely one of the more interesting tactical questions Pradaken faces in any fight where the gauntlet is on the table. The Death Scythe, Shinigami no Kama. The third weapon is the one the gift is named after. The Death Scythe, also called Deathbringer, is a large, elegantly curved scythe manifested as Pradaken's signature melee weapon. Smooth arc blade, long staff. Golden spike accents at the connection point. The entire weapon wreathed in violet-white Sakti. And here's the detail that defines everything about how it fights. The blade is not physically attached to the staff. It's held in position by a surrounding coat of Death Origin Sakti, which means it can extend. It can rotate independently of the staff. It can position at any angle relative to the handle. It can reach up to 15 or 20 meters from Pradaken's position and still be under his direct control. He can place the staff in one location and extend the blade to strike at targets nowhere near where he's standing. It creates combat geometry that a physically attached blade simply cannot achieve. The scythe is a finishing weapon. The slashing attacks it's built around are not designed for sustained exchanges. They're designed to end things. A well-placed slash cuts through physical structures, coat defenses, and Sakti-aligned manifestations with equal ease. The blade carries a specific Sakti property that lets it interact with and cut through gift-based constructs and ethereal structures that ordinary weapons cannot meaningfully touch. Opponents whose entire defensive strategy is built around Sakti manifestations find that the Death Scythe is specifically bad news for them. Pradaken doesn't drop everything and become a scythe fighter when he manifests the weapon. He integrates it, scythe strikes as finishers or area control. The blade maintained defensively, while he continues with hand-to-hand, rapid retraction and redeployment between melee and ranged application. The weapon appears when the engagement demands it. When an opponent's capability exceeds what standard hand-to-hand can manage, when structures need removing, when the situation calls for the dramatic single strike that only a blade of that scale and reach can deliver. This is the weapon that tells you an engagement has reached a certain level of seriousness. When the Death Scythe comes out, Pradaken has made a decision about how this ends. Let's step back from the technical breakdown for a moment and talk about why Pradaken actually functions as a protagonist, because raw capability alone doesn't do it. Plenty of series have powerful main characters who are completely boring. Pradaken isn't boring. He works because he contains contradictions that shouldn't fit together, and then fits them together anyway. Goofy but serious, trusting but precise, optimistic but capable of genuine ruthlessness. 14 years old but carrying instincts that usually take decades to develop. Laughs constantly and carries weight that most adults never encounter. He doesn't think about these contradictions because justice didn't raise him to think about them. Justice raised him to be them. The result is someone who is easy to underestimate and impossible to ignore once you're paying attention. And then, underneath all of that, underneath the puns and the loyalty and the skeleton aura, is the question the story hasn't answered yet. Who was he before justice found him? What was the darkest hour really? And why was an infant found in the middle of it? What does Chosen One actually mean in this world? What is Pradaken being prepared to face? And what does it cost? He doesn't know. Justice knows and hasn't said. Pradaken has decided that's acceptable because justice has never been wrong about him, and that trust is the foundation everything else is built on. That gap between what he knows about himself and what he doesn't, between the conviction that he matters and the absence of understanding why, is the most compelling thing about his arc. He is a protagonist moving forward without knowing his own story. And watching him become capable enough to eventually receive that story is what Nomads End is about. So, Pradaken Kaioshi, 14 years old, pro-level nomad, Deathbringer gift. A martial arts system designed specifically for him by the man who raised him. A combat toolkit built around adaptation, precision, conversion, and the ever-present threat of coup de grace turning any moment into the last one. A goofy kid who makes bad puns, laughs too loud, would do genuinely dark things to protect the people he loves, and happens to manifest a massive lightning skull when he gets serious. And somewhere underneath all of that, a question about who he really is that the story hasn't answered yet, and a trust held completely and without reservation that the man who raised him is right about him. Honestly, good protagonist. Solid construction. The series earned him. This has been Nomads End 101, Episode 1. If you want to see the next breakdown, the Sakti system, the Paladin reality group, the Darkest Hour, whoever you want covered next, drop it in the comments. Subscribe if you're new.